قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, after the passing away of Abu Talib and Khadija, and seeing the stalemate that the mission reached in Mecca, and many avenues were being blocked, so the Messenger of Allah felt the necessity of finding an alternative base, somewhere where he can have freedom to propagate the message.
From the 10th year to the 13th year, the focus of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was on the people outside Mecca. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ will take advantage of the tribes who are coming from outside Mecca to perform Hajj. And the Prophet ﷺ will approach them. And mainly the Prophet ﷺ used to go to them at night. So no one from the non-believers of Mecca that sees the Prophet ﷺ talking to anyone will come and humiliate the Prophet ﷺ in front of him.
As Zuhri states, the Messenger of Allah would for the period of those years present himself to the Arab tribes at each fair, speaking with each tribal leader, but asking them only for their protection and support. He would say, I don't wish to force any of you to do anything. Any of you who agree to what I ask may do so, but I would not compel anyone not so wishing. All I want is to guard myself against those who want to kill me, so that I may fulfill my Lord's mission and carry out whatever decree He wishes regarding myself and those who support me.
What Abu Lahab, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, used to do, sometimes when he used to see the Prophet ﷺ talking to tribes in Mecca during the Hajj season, he'll come up to them and say, here is my nephew, and I say to you, he's a liar. Not even one tribe accepted Islam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to spread the light of Islam in a city that Allah Azza wa Jal had chosen that city to be the best of cities, which is Yathrib.
Ibn Ishaq, he goes on with the story of Al-Ansar. Now, who are Al-Ansar? Al-Aws wal-Khazraj, when they became Muslim, were called Al-Ansar, which means the protectors. Al-Aws wal-Khazraj were the two Arab tribes that were living in Medina, and they are descendants of the branch of Qahtan. They were neighboring three Jewish tribes, Banu Qurayza, Banu Qaynuqa, and Banu Nadir.
Al-Aws and Khazraj, although they're both Arab, but they were fighting against each other. They were fighting against each other for many years, even some narration says for over 100 years. The Prophet ﷺ was going around to different tribes, calling the people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Prophet ﷺ at night heard a loud voice of men talking. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ approached them, and there were 6 young men from Yathrib, all of them from the tribe of Khazraj. They were As'ad ibn Zurara, Auf ibn al-Harith, Rafi' ibn Malik, Qutbah ibn Amir, Uqba ibn Amir, and Jabir ibn Abdullah. They were all from the Khazraj, from the people of Yathrib. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ approached them at night and sat down with them. And the Prophet ﷺ said, where are you guys from? So they said, we are from Khazraj. Are you from the allies of the Jews? So they said, yes. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ started to speak to them about Islam. And he recited the Quran to them. And then they started to look at each other and they said, by Allah, do you know, maybe this is the Prophet that the Jews always threaten you by. Now the Jews were always outnumbered by the Aws and Khazraj. And every time a war breaks out between the Aws and Khazraj and the Jews always get defeated. But what do they always say in return? You defeat us now, it is soon for a prophet to come out. He's going to come with us and we're going to hit back on you. We're going to retaliate and destroy you like Ad and Iram, like how the nations before were destroyed. So what did they say? This is the prophet. This is the prophet that the Jews always threaten you through. Why don't we beat them, become a Muslim with him, let them stand with us before they get to him. O Messenger of Allah, we hope that through this religion, Allah Azza wa Jal will vanish the war that's between us. Because for over 100 years, 2 tribes, original from one grandfather, fighting each other for over 100 years, they've destroyed each other. Through this religion, maybe Allah Azza wa Jal will take the war away from them, and they'll be united, and peace and tranquility will come back to them in their town Yathrib. So they went back to Medina and they called the people to Islam. As the following year, more of them will become Muslims and come to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Also in that year, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam with another marriage in the 11th year of the prophecy, where the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam got married to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam got engaged to her, she was 6, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam moved in with Aisha when she was 9. And obviously people find that very strange. Yes, it's strange in our time and customs, but you know, just 30 years ago and 40 years ago, a lot of our mothers got married when they were 13 and 14 years old.
Anyway, so these 6 men accepted Islam, and they told Rasulullah ﷺ, we'll go back to our people and start preaching the message. And they made an appointment with Rasulullah ﷺ to meet him next year in the season of Hajj. So a year passed by, and now the season of Hajj approached. The 6 came back as 12. 10 of them were from Al-Khazraj and 2 from Al-Aws. They came to Rasulullah ﷺ and they gave him pledge of allegiance, and it was called the pledge of the woman. Why? Because it did not include within its terms any pledge of fighting. The terms of the pledge were: we pledged to the Messenger of Allah on the night of the first meeting at Aqaba that we would not associate any other God with Allah, that we would not steal, commit fornication, kill our children, make false accusations, nor disobey Him in anything good. He told us, if you keep to this, you shall have paradise. But if you give up any of this and you are punished for it in this world, then that will provide atonement for you. But if it is overlooked until Judgment Day, it will be up to Allah to decide whether to punish or to forgive you. Now, Rasulullah ﷺ appointed Mus'ab bin Umair to go and teach the people of Madinah Islam. You can call him an ambassador, you can call him a teacher, you can call him a scholar. He had all of these roles in one. Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu came from a wealthy family in Quraysh. Mus'ab ibn Umair was the most spoiled young man in Mecca before Islam. And subhanAllah, Mus'ab ibn Umair, who was wealthy, turned from wealth to poverty. So now Mus'ab ibn Umair left Mecca and he went to reside in Medina.
Within 1 year, there was not even one house in Yathrib that did not have one person who did not embrace Islam.
One day, Mus'ab ibn Umair radiallahu anhu was with As'ad bin Zurara, who was his host. So they went to visit some of the Muslims. They went into this farm and they were sitting there, and the Muslims were coming to them to learn. They happened to go to a neighborhood of Medina that was part of Al-Aws's territory. The majority of the Muslims were from which tribe? From Al-Khazraj. So Islam now was spreading with speed among Al-Khazraj, but it wasn't catching up with Al-Aws. So now Mus'ab ibn Umair is trying to make inroads within Al-Aws. So they went to an area that is in the land of Al-Aws, and they sat there. The leaders of Al-Aws were close by, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh and Usayd bin Khudayr. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh spotted Mus'ab ibn Umair and As'ad bin Zurara. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh told Usayd bin Khudayr, I want you to go to those 2 men and tell them that we don't want them around misguiding the weak and foolish among us. And if it wasn't for the fact that As'ad bin Zurara was my relative, I would have done that myself. So now Usayd bin Khudayr went up carrying his spear towards Mus'ab bin Umair and As'ad bin Zurara. As'ad bin Zurara saw him coming and he told Mus'ab bin Umair, this is a leader of his people, be sincere with him. Because if he becomes Muslim, many people will follow him. So now Usayd bin Khudayr came, speaking to them in a very harsh tone. We don't want you around here, misleading the weak and ignorant among us. And then he said, and if you care about your lives, you better get out of here. Mus'ab bin Umair responded calmly by saying, how about you sit down and you hear what I say. If you like it, you can accept it. If you don't, you can reject it. Usayd bin Khudayr said, fair enough. And he sat down. Mus'ab bin Umair started reciting to him ayat of Quran, giving him da'wah, explaining Islam. As'ad bin Zurara said, even without him speaking a word, we were able to see Islam entering his heart because of the calmness in his face and the radiance of light coming out of it. And when Mus'ab bin Umair finished with his session with Usayd bin Khudayr, Usayd bin Khudayr said, what does one have to do to join your religion? Mus'ab bin Umair told him, wash yourself and you come and pray. Usayd bin Khudayr, he did that, and then he came back and he said, now I'm going to send you a man. If he becomes Muslim, all of his people will follow him. Usayd bin Khudayr went to Sa'd bin Mu'adh. Now Sa'd bin Mu'adh saw Usayd bin Khudayr and he said, I swear by Allah that he's coming to us with a different face than the one he left us with.
And he told him, look, I went and spoke to him, but he said, there's a tribe they're coming to cause problem to As'ad. Now Sa'd is the cousin of As'ad. As'ad is with Mus'ab. So now Sa'd bin Mu'adh forgot about Mus'ab, forgot about As'ad, forgot about Islam, now becomes tribalism. And Sa'd bin Mu'adh grabbed his spear and arrow and bow and went to fight and protect As'ad. On the way, Sa'd bin Mu'adh went past that tribe. But he realized that tribe is like living their life normal. So Sa'd realized that Usayd played the game on him. But he continued his journey to go and meet with his cousin As'ad, and that's where he saw Mus'ab. When he approached Mus'ab, he approached him in a rough manner, like how Usayd did before him. And he said, what brought you here? Coming and causing problems, dividing between our families. So Mus'ab again, with his wisdom, he said, look, how can you make a judgment over something you haven't heard of? That's not fair. You're a wise man. Sit down with me and hear my side of the story. If you like it, take it. If you don't like it, I'll walk away. Sa'd bin Mu'adh, from his wisdom, he said, okay, you made a fair deal. He'll sit down and listen to Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu will recite some verses from the Quran al-Kareem. And the call of the Prophet alayhi salatu was salam. So Sa'd ibn Mu'adh had no other choice and option except to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. And then he went and he called all his tribe and he said, what do you think of me? So they all said, you are the most wisest man amongst us. You are the most intelligent man amongst us. You are our leader, our chief. So he said, by Allah, it is forbidden on every single man and woman from amongst you to speak to me until you all embrace Islam and believe in Allah and His Messenger.
The narrator of the hadith said, by the end of that evening, every house among Banu al-Ashhal was Muslim. The whole clan of Banu al-Ashhal, which were a branch of Al-Aws. So now a huge breakthrough was made within Al-Aws. So now the appointment to meet Rasulullah ﷺ in pilgrimage was approaching. So over 70 of the Muslims went with the pilgrims of their people. So the delegation that came out of Medina included Muslims and non-Muslims. Ka'b ibn Malik said, we then left to the pilgrimage, having made an agreement to meet the Messenger of Allah ﷺ at Al-Aqaba in the middle of the Tashriq period. So they made an appointment to meet at a specific time. Ka'b ibn Malik says, we kept this as a secret. None of our people knew about it. All of the non-Muslims in our group knew nothing about our meeting with Rasulullah ﷺ. It was secret. Except Abu Jabir, Abdullah bin Haram, he was one of our leaders and seniors. We went up to him and we told him, Abu Jabir, you are one of our noble leaders and we would like you to give up your practices Otherwise, one day you would end up as fuel for hellfire. Abu Jabir did accept Islam, so they told him about the private meeting, and he was one of the people who attended with him. The time for the appointment, it was late at night. Ka'b ibn Malik said, we were going towards Al-Aqaba in ones or twos, until they all gathered in Al-Aqaba. And then Rasulullah ﷺ showed up. And he had one person with him, and that was the only non-Muslim to attend the meeting. Al-Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib, the uncle of Rasulullah ﷺ. And Al-Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib was the first person to speak. He said, Muhammad holds with us a position of which you are aware. We protect him from our people who think about him as we do. He is respected among his people and safe in his own town. But he is determined to join up with you. If you think you will keep trust with him in the invitation you have given to him and will protect him from his opponents, then it's up to you to accept your responsibilities. But if you think you might deliver him over and abandon him after he has joined you, then leave him right now. He does have respect and protection among his own people and in his town. Al-Ansar said, we have heard what you have to say. Now, O Messenger of Allah, ask us what you want. Rasulullah ﷺ stood up and said, I ask you to pledge that you will defend me as you do your women and children. He also told them in a different narration, you must pledge to hear and obey at times of both action and inaction, to give whether times are hard or easy, and to advocate goodness and prohibit evil. You must speak out for Allah and not fear any blame for supporting Allah. You must help and defend me if I come to you in the same way you help and defend yourselves, your wives, and your children. And then he said, and you fear no one but Allah. Al-Bara bin Ma'rur, he stood up and wanted to give Rasulullah ﷺ bay'ah, and he said, O Messenger of Allah, I swear it, we are warriors from father to son over many generations. And while Al-Bara bin Ma'rur was speaking, Abu al-Haytham stood up and he interrupted and he said, O Messenger of Allah, we have certain ties to others, referring to the Jews. And if we break these, we are concerned that if God gives you victory, you might return to your people and abandon us. But are you going to stay with us or are you going to leave us? Rasulullah ﷺ responded after smiling. He said, if your blood be sought, our blood shall be sought. And your destruction is mine as well. I am of you and you are of me. I will battle those who battle you and make peace with those with whom you make peace. We are going to offer you protection even if we lose our lives and our wealth. What will you give us in exchange? What did the Rasulullah ﷺ say? He responded by telling them one word, Al-Jannah, paradise. Nothing else. I'm not going to give you kingdom. I'm not promising you wealth. I'm not going to promise you succession after me. All what I can promise you is Jannah. And what was their response? They said, this is such a profitable deal. We will never give up.
Obviously the news went out. So the next day, the people of Quraysh got together and decided to meet with the leaders of Yathrib. And they said, what's this news that we've heard about you giving the pledge to Muhammad and you are willing to support Muhammad? And then they said, by Allah, O people of Yathrib, you are the last people that would love to have war and enmity between. So the non-Muslims amongst the people of Yathrib who knew nothing about this pledge and knew nothing that amongst them that are Muslims, they all said, no, that's not true. They all denied that rumor. They said, no, none of us had given Muhammad a bay'ah. We don't even know Muhammad and we don't even believe in Muhammad. And the rest of the Muslims, those 71 Muslims or more who were in the tent, they said, none of them said anything. None of them denied and none of them said yes. They just kept quiet. So the people of Quraysh walked away until the people of Yathrib traveled and left Mecca, traveling back to Medina. that's when the confirmation of the rumors they gave the place of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the people of Quraysh came following them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed that the people of Yathrib were far away from the people of Quraysh for them to catch up with them.
This meeting between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Ansar, we can fairly say that it is the most important meeting that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had so far. It was a turning point in Islam. Finally now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has a solid base to start spreading the message from, with protection, and propagate the message of Allah Azza wa Jal.